We're going to next feature Dan Lawfully with IUCN, who's been a close partner of ours for the last 4 years. And we've, I showed you briefly the marine protected areas layer in Google Earth, and we're working closely to expand that and improve that. We work together on tours to actually tell a story through the content, and we're excited to have him join us in this session and to hear how he's been using our tools to communicate his work. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much indeed. So what I'm going to do in the next sort of 20 minutes or so is what I kind of call kind of ocean in action in a sense. So I'll explain about that in a minute, and that's really how we're using these tools live in key meetings around the world. How do I come to be in that position, and where have we come from on this, and what kind of drives me about this? I'll tell you a little bit of history, really. So in 2005, at the first International Marine Protected Area Congress, I've always been involved in marine protection. They asked me if I would become what's called the Marine Vice Chair of the World Commission on Protected Areas, which is effectively the kind of figurehead role for marine protected areas in the second largest commission, the World Commission on Protected Areas. And really, it was a massive opportunity because they forgot to write any terms of reference around my role, which was quite cool because I could then see what I could really do to try and champion marine protection. And I think it's kind of worth thinking about where we were back then and the challenge that I had, and how this amazing partnership with Google and with National Geographic, they were amazing partners from the start, and Sylvia at the very start, have really transformed something into, we're kind of used to having kind of a Google Ocean and things like that, but it wasn't quite like that when we started, and it was how I solved a big problem for IUCN in effect. And it wasn't me solving it, it was Google and all our friends in a sense, but there was a real reality about this. So when I came in, our way of communicating marine protected areas, which was fit for purpose at the time before me, was to produce some really thick, big publications and put maps in them, and there was nothing digital. So actually we actually went to the basement of the World Bank to find the guide to see if we could get the files for the maps. It was rather like Indiana Jones and the looking for the Ark in that long massive warehouse, okay? And I called two things happened simultaneously, one before the other actually, but I'll tell you about the second one first, which is I called a summit when I became Vice Chair in Washington, and John was very gracious to lend us National Geographic for the summit, and we brought together to try and invigorate the kind of marine protection process at a global scale. To get maps for that, I actually had to buy the maps off UNEP to put them on the wall, and they were then inaccurate, and that was our connectivity for marine protection. And I actually wanted to find a way in which we could actually connect to our members. So rather than, how many copies can you make on a Xerox machine, the reality is that IUCN operates with 200 governments. We have 10,000 specialists, and we have over 1,200 members. So Xerox machines and hard copies were out, and we had to find a new way of doing this, and a way that would really work. So that was coming together, realizing we had a big problem, and a year before, when I became Vice Chair, I made a trip, and it was a result of a conversation that occurred on Bristol Temple Mead Station, of all places. I was a busy man then, and the guy I was meeting was going in the opposite direction. We got off the train for 20 minutes, met in the cafe, and it was the guy, do you remember the Blue Planet series of the BBC? This was the guy who bought the Blue Planet diaries to everyone, John Whelan, who I was at university with. And I was saying, we've got to work out how we deal with this. And he said, we had a discussion about why can't we just go to Google and talk to Google? Unbeknown, and Sylvia, and we heard the fact that Sylvia had the prize giving in Barcelona and everything. And so I flew across to Washington with one main aim on my first meeting, which was on my first day, which was to see Sylvia, and Sylvia was at CI then, and we were surrounded by everybody, and we got 10 minutes alone, and it was my 10 minutes to make the pitch. And Sylvia said, I really need to speak to you about something. And I went, no, I need to speak to you about something. And I said, you go first. And Sylvia said, I've just been in Barcelona, we need to do something about Google Earth and put an ocean on it. And it was like, damn, I've just come across the Atlantic to have that discussion. And so I undertook then that what we would do is we would try and bring all the MPAs out of this difficult situation of lack of access onto Google, and that we would try and do more to actually bring the whole process together so that we could do what we're doing now. You know, Google's a fantastic partner of ours, and we've had workshops here as well with members working with Google Earth Outreach and getting that one-to-one contact. And that, for me, is about moving from a very difficult situation of inaccessibility to something which was going to be incredibly accessible. So basically the concept that we had, which became fruition with Sylvia's leadership, so I was on the Council of Advisors at Google, was to actually take what we were doing. So when I came in, they wanted me to do another 4-volume set, and I said, we're not going to do it that way, we're going to do it this way. We're going to put it onto, these are the original slides, onto laptops and ultimately onto handheld devices. Google would be a great partner, and it's going to be better information, better decision making, and a public good. So Sylvia and I made that undertaking in that meeting, and I walked back into IUCN after my first meeting in Washington. They said, how did it go? And I went, it went great, we're going to rebuild Google Earth. And they thought I was completely mad. But that actually then transpired through the process that Sylvia led, and we found a complete new connectivity. So this was about really taking the real world and putting it into the virtual world. And it was on the 2nd of February 2009 that we launched Google Ocean, Ocean and Google Earth. But before that, it's worth remembering where we were at the last Congress, because that was actually after the last Congress. And in Barcelona, we actually managed to get up the MPA layer for the first time, the first kind of connectivity. And then we have Google Ocean, and now this. And that's the launch with Sylvia doing her stuff in San Francisco. And then of course now you can stand inside Google Earth and stand inside an ocean. This is at the Blue Planet Pavilion, and this is one of the liquid galaxies. And we've now switched on the MPA layer, so you can go and play with all the MPAs around the world. So you've got to understand the political speed of IUCN and things might move slowly in here. We've done something really spectacular with our partners and being part of a bigger process, thinking outside the box, that we've moved from quite a difficult situation of accessibility to everyone having access, and 1 billion people having access to, 1 billion plus people having access to these types of things. I don't want it to stop there, so I'm always driving forward, and you've heard some of the ideas that I also am in a very lucky position to help with outreach. I sit on top of the largest aggregation of ocean acidification research in the world. And we're now working with Google to give them a voice as well, and the challenges of how you make acidification come live. So it's not just protected areas, it's chemistry. How do you make chemistry become live and realise how serious it is to apply to the oceans? And ultimately, you know, I want to see MPAs on Google Maps. Whenever you do a search, I want to see the ocean actually having the MPAs in it, so you get a sense of place, and we start to put some of these features that you see on land all the time. Whenever you see the ocean, you see protection, you see what's happening. So that we're on, I think, on an evolutionary process. So let me show you some of the stuff that we're doing. So as kind of Vice Chair of the Commission, I get put in some pretty unique and amazing opportunities. One of the things we've been thinking about is how can you actually bring a lot of the country, a lot of the world with us. And there are always new opportunities. And just earlier this year, I was in a very fortunate position to be asked to open the first forum of marine advisors for the Commonwealth in London. And they gave me carte blanche for what I wanted to do, and I wanted to really kind of excite them about things and show them something different that they didn't expect. So this is what a meeting of the Commonwealth looks like inside an ex-royal palace. There's more gold leaf in that room than I think I've seen anywhere else. And they're all ambassadors representing their countries. We had about just over half the Commonwealth present. And that's the view from the podium, a slightly scary view. And so what did we do? Well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to jump out of this because we have a slight glitch in this, this animation. And I'm going to play it in media player. And this also actually shows what we do. So what we do is we think of what the audience are, and we also think of how we can connect them from their iconic moments to their responsibilities. And we make little animations that I then talk over, and it then kind of leads into providing a platform to be able to kind of talk about the real issues about the ocean. So this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do this one and talk over it, and then I'm going to show you what we did with the members forum. So I did a similar thing, but with different messages, and I'll explain the context of that, which happened a few days ago. And then I'm going to show how we stitch content together from the ocean layer in an animated tour that can be narrated for particular themes, and this one will be on marine mammals, and it's how we opened and launched the second Marine Mammal Protected Area conference in Martinique. So basically, where I started this one with the Commonwealth is to say, where I want to start is actually by giving you a complete perspective on this about where we really are. And it's amazing to think that it's just 40 years ago that we saw the Earth from afar from our nearest neighbour. Small, predominantly blue, beautiful, but very finite, hanging in the dark void of space. But of course, roll on 40 years from that time and things have changed. That's become a digital ocean. 1 billion people can access it. And with that, I can take you, the Commonwealth representatives, to your oceans. And we can actually see what's at stake in the discussions here. The Indian Ocean, shallow, warmest ocean of the world. The Pacific Ocean, the blue heart of the planet, dotted by small island states. The Atlantic Ocean, with its characteristic sort of erratic zip-like fastener of the mid-Atlantic ridge down the middle. And then climate-compromised oceans, like the Arctic. So, what have we got to say about this? What actions can you think about taking in relation to protecting the blue heart of the planet? And that brings me rather neatly, with a little help from Google, to our meeting here in London. And at that point, all the ambassadors went, whoa. And so, it's kind of, at that point, you've kind of got them in a nice place where you can tell them stuff. So then I'll show you what we then did, if I can get out of this. Ooh, can you get me out of that, please? Thank you. Okay, so let's just pick that up. So that's where we landed. So I then go, so where are we with this? 40 years ago, it was the era of ocean exploration. We've learnt an awful lot in that time. We now see the ocean as a place that we go on holiday. We know it, it's familiar to us, but it's got many other values. It's a place of amazing beauty, and this is the west coast of New Caledonia, made a World Heritage Site just a couple of years ago, with these amazing reefs. It's a place that does things for us that we never really think about. We're kept warmer in Europe by the Gulf Stream. But it's also a place that has really unseen processes of magnitude we don't think about that replenish the ecosystems, a sandstorm brushing off the Sahara into the middle of the Atlantic, feeding the plankton communities with nutrients. And there's things in the ocean we don't give a thought to, that are the energy plants that recycle things back into the environment. Burrowing shrimps, echinoderms, clams that live in the sediment, and worms. They all are actually part of the engine that feeds a process that enables us to have our productivity. And then, of course, you've got to remember how ever disconnected you are to the ocean, that every breath you take, as Sylvia says, connects you back to the ocean. And we now know that this is about the ocean. It's not, when we think of where the oxygen comes from, the most abundant organisms in the world that do this are not some species of tree or variety of grass. They're actually something called Prochlorococcus, which is shown in pale green here, which is the most photosynthetically abundant organism on the planet. They exist in several octillion, and for those of you with a numbers head, I think that's 10 to the 27, an unfathomably large number. So next time you're passing the ocean, give thanks to it. So that's the kind of, and we kind of get them in, and so I then have all the ambassadors sitting around going, listening to every word. The consequence of that is we've now got a number of Commonwealth countries doing more for the ocean. So they've now contacted, it's called ComSec, it's Commonwealth Secretariat in London, that gives a advisory service, and since then we've had at least 2 countries, 2 working together in partnership, and usually another one separately, actually saying they want to do more, they want to deal with some of the things that we were talking about. So this, we know this kind of can have a resonance and can have a real impact. We did a different one for this meeting. So what happened in the organisation of the whole Congress was that we had themes of days, as you recall. So we had climate on the first day, and then the following morning, at the start of the Members' Assembly, I, on behalf of the Royal Commission on Protected Areas, summed up everything that had happened at Congress the previous day, and had an opportunity to talk to all the members of IUCN assembled on the floor. So we knew that in advance, and it was again due to the kind of Nick Loperkey, the chair of the commission, really giving me the opportunity to do these things, and we thought we'd kind of do a little extra. So I had 10 minutes. I reckon I could steal a minute and a bit out of that to actually give some messages, because we could just get bogged down in detail, and I wanted to actually show the broader issue, and I wanted to actually bring to the attention of all the members that we've missed an entire issue here. When we think of nature-based solutions and the pressures, everyone's talking about climate change, no one's talking about ocean acidification. And ocean acidification is probably the thing that's going to come and bite us. And so this gave me an opportunity to do a different tour. So I will now do this again live, and this is what we did at the start of the feedback. So I was given the opportunity to do this, and I thanked them for doing it, and I said, however, before I give you the feedback, I want to take just a moment to give some critical context to what we're thinking about. And again, over this slide, I said the same thing about, you see the Earth from afar, very finite, hanging in the dark void of space. Whoops. Can I click that? And this time again, it was a message that we can put this on 1 billion desktops and give people a new view. But other things have changed we need to think about in our forum today. We've changed from 7 billion to, we're going to change perhaps to 9 billion within 40 years. We're moving carbon faster than anything in the last 15 million years. We're changing the climate. Temperatures are rising, sea levels are rising, floods and droughts. But we know in all this that nature is our friend. This really is nature plus, and it's nature-based solutions. But we also have to think that those solutions need to keep pace with the challenges. Scientists in Australia, Europe and America are now telling us that the ocean, the blue heart of the planet, is 30% more acidic than it should be due to our activities. So when we look at the Arctic, it's not just climate change, it's acidification as well, and we will really need to think about that in our forward plans. So at the Assembly today, here in Jeju, we need to think hard about the resolutions and decisions that we make, and we land on the roof. So this is kind of what I call Google Earth and Ocean in Action, in the sense that I try and do these things. It's actually quite difficult, because these are made by a friend of mine in America, and we have a kind of timing issue to be able to get the messages. And so I almost file a flight plan, as I call it. It's not a kind of PowerPoint anymore, it's kind of flight plan with timings, which is how we work on the bigger stuff with Jennifer. So let's talk a bit about MPAs and build on the issues about the MPA lab. So one of the things that I wanted to do was basically liberate MPAs into the broader community so that people could see them, could engage with them. And Jennifer's shown this pop-up before, and we worked with Google to create multimedia pop-ups that you could add content to, that you could engage with, to create not just a visibility, but an engagement point that then would enable members of IUCN and interested parties to actually be able to help improve the map. One of my biggest problems as Marine Vice Chair was not only the accessibility to information on marine protected areas, so how am I going to convince countries of the CBD or wherever to do more if I can't produce a map? And there's no visibility to maps. So this was part of the process, but what we'd actually done is we put, I think there were 4 levels of security to get into the World Database on Protected Areas to update information. So no one was really going there. And so the alternative, but we did that because we were worried about inaccurate data. But of course times have changed, and now you need to do it through wiki processes and give everyone an opportunity to contribute. Because in actual fact, you're going to get far more accurate that way than you are through the other route. And so it was actually rewriting how we did it all. Protect Planet Ocean was actually the inspiration to Protected Planet. There's a slight coincidence of names there. And we now have the whole process turned around so that you have much more engagement in the process. Again, I'd stress that this has happened literally between 2 congresses, and this is quite fast, I think, in terms of how we're moving. But I'm a man in a hurry with ocean acidification, and we need to pick up the pace. One of the challenges, though,